It's November 29th, 2022. I'm watching CBS This Morning, episode 237, and Jimmy Kimmel is on CBS. He and one of his, whichever um, cohorts, um, put on elf wear, or so they call it elf. Again, like, I don't know if is that reference Elf's Wolf? Is that s- a, like the Saint Nick elf? I don't know. And then he interviewed two children, one male, one female, about curse words. I remember somebody calling on the phone to interview me as a child. I don't know if it was Gateway, I'm not quite sure. Um, to very interested, whatever that was about what I arrived to in my birth in 1978. Um, and there was a real difference in the two, my father and my mother's side of the family, that I noticed right away. Um, in the house that I was in with Linda and Lewis, there was no swearing, no curse words. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how you could tell. I didn't know what it sounded like. Someone would have given me an example, but nobody wanted to fess up to what a curse word was. So that became an interesting dilemma when I was younger. Um, and so, um, but it was conversations that started very early on. I was very vocal and verbal, and there was some form of communication. Um, Now, I've heard this rumor that sailors curse, like you're cursing like a sailor, but never addressed at me. It's just a reference someone used once upon a time. Um, but my grandmother's children had a sailor too that did said he would try, even though I wouldn't be able to tell the difference, he would try to make sure, and he was in charge of making sure that when I was around to please the other side of the family, that they would use nicer language in the house, since they were very used to being a different way. Um, so I remember that taking place. I found it interesting this morning that they're sitting down and asking about curse words, and the children now in this next generation, younger than my youngest son, in somebody else's household on this TV program, they're interviewed and they actually know what the curse words are. They're able to decipher between the words that some use and some don't. Um, Also with Alexander, Benjamin, Daniel, and Alexander growing up, the three of them with me as a single parent, I had um, an au pair who stayed in the house and can confer. There was no even speak of curse. We didn't use it, her or myself. It was not something that just slipped out. It was not something that they were children. There was no need to spice up the language at home in order to show emotion in that level of conversation. It's a different way of being. It's the way I was raised. It's the way that my children were raised. The only time they heard a different way of being was when the insult to my intelligence moved in, and then he had a different way of speaking. So it became difficult to protect my children and their auditory ears from his foreign way of being to our version of North America, or Long Island. And that's the 1975 version of a problem. So I'm watching this morning, and it just brings up the beginning series of interviews that I had when I was a child with, I can't remember who. My memory is not that sharp this far into what feels like black hole theory and gravitas being extreme gravity. And with Hummingbird, that I was built for, never formalizing in the way that we had planned as children or anticipated as Flower a Hummingbird. I think the North Americans had on the television under Charlie Brown the Great Pumpkin, right? There was a great hummingbird somewhere in the universe that has a flower that it would really like to get to, and it's hungry for the flower. At some point, that was too much, I think, and it was toned down to some other effigy in ideals and way of speaking. So again, strictly horseshoes on an escalator on this one, in respectful and humble pardoning thine self from further having to further conversate. I mean, there is a very specific humble recipient that very well knows since we were children what I sought out, and I am not clear why, when we have this very specific time piece and it's quantifiable and it's not just in theory, it's in practicality, what the holdup is, I don't understand.
Nicole, come out and dry these pots.
Sure, just give me 1 second.
We sat down with kids to try to find out who has been naughty and who has been nice.
You sometimes say bad words. What bad? Which words? Where did you learn those words, Vince?
My mom and dad.
This morning's Eye Opener is presented by Progressive.
It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza, it's Earth, solar system, Milky Way universe, galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.